Dreamscape presents Home to the Riverview Inn by Molly O'Keefe, narrated by Tanya Eby. 1. Jonah Klosky stared out the window and thought of money. Great heaps of it. He barely listened to Gary Murphy, his business partner, read over the contract. Most days he barely listened to Gary, but today Jonah was mentally counting the profit they'd make once Gary stopped reading and everyone got to the signing part. The answer, of course, was a fortune. Plenty for anyone else. But for Jonah, for his plans, for Haven House, it wasn't quite enough. It was never quite enough.
Rick Ornis, seller, agrees to pay the cost of soil removal in the northwest corner of the property.
Gary read from the sheath of papers in front of him. Rick, who sat at the corner of the boardroom table, put up his hand, interrupting Gary.
About that,
Rick said. Jonah tuned into the conversation with his whole body. The terms of this contract had already been hashed and rehashed. There should be no about-thats.
Is that really necessary? Rick asked. That soil thing? Well,
Gary laid the papers down on the table, keeping his cool when Jonah knew his partner had to be having a heart attack. Gary wasn't much for about-thats either.
Considering the amount of arsenic in it, yes,
Gary said.
It is. We will treat the rest of the property and retest, but that northwest corner needs to be dug out and all that soil replaced.
Rick looked over at Jonah and smiled.
Jonah,
he said, holding out his hands as though they were co-conspirators.
Come on. Between us, you know that with the right amount of money, Beringer will overlook that. I don't bribe city officials, Jonah said, and I don't build on dirty land. What about your current site? Rick asked. I heard you were about to start building and the city just shut you down for poisoned soil. Where'd you hear that?
Gary asked, and Jonah nearly hung his head at his partner's transparency. It was no wonder Gary couldn't play cards. A 10-year-old child had a better poker face.
Everyone knows, Rick said. Yesterday, I must have gotten 7 calls from people telling me about it. It'll be all over the papers in no time.
Gary's worried gaze flicked to Jonah, and Jonah held up a hand, trying to get his business partner to relax, to not fly off the handle like some freaked-out howler monkey.
So,
Rick continued, his eyes gleaming with a certain smug satisfaction,
why don't you guys cut the righteous environmental act? Act?
Gary nearly squealed, and Jonah rolled his eyes.
Yeah, and we can get down to business.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?